The title of our workshop is the Digital Pinocchio, and to many, it might have seemed sort of a joke or just a way to attract attention by using a reference to this character, to this extremely popular around the world, and as a consequence, it is an immediate reference for everybody, for colleagues from many different walks. And I must admit that there was also this, let's say, advertising purpose. But at the same time, the more I thought about Pinocchio and the idea of a digital Pinocchio, and the more I realized that there was a disquieting philosophical depth in this idea. And as always, references to this philosophical depth started to accumulate. And I realized that the figure of Pinocchio was actually perfect to introduce, but also to frame a reflection, which is a philosophical reflection at the crossroad between digital technology, the meaning of the face, and the meaning of the fake. So I don't know if you, just to test the sound of our videos, let's see if we can hear Pinocchio by Henri Salvador, which is very famous in France. It's a homage also to our French audience today. Can you hear it? No. So it's also a way of testing it. So the best thing is probably that I share it with the sound of the computer. AirPods anymore. So let me see if you can hear it now. Again, it's just a way to test the videos. Okay, after listening to this song just one time, it's actually impossible to forget it. So you're gonna have it, you're gonna have this song in your ears for the entire workshop. It seems a little bit challenging to put this picture of Henri Salvador's album Pinocchio that was published in 1975, so the year in which I myself was born, with the cover of a tremendously influential philosophical work of the second half of the 20th century, which is the Thèse d'État of Gilbert Simondon, L'individuation à la lumière des notions de forme et d'information. Of course, we are all, I believe, familiar with the works of Gilbert Simondon, who is becoming a central figure, who has become a central figure in the philosophical reflection on technology and technique, not only in France and not only in the Francophonie, but in the entire world, is a philosophical figure whose career and destiny is that of the great thinkers, mainly that has been mainly discovered as a posthumous source of philosophical reflection, with the exception of Deleuze, who was, of course, an enthusiastic reviewer of Simondon's early works. But I wanted to start from Simondon because I think at the core of my personal reflection on the face, as well as my personal reflection on the fake, is the preoccupation with the concept and a problematic field of individualization and individuation. So how is individuality, and more generally, how is singularity built
from a philosophical point of view, and especially from a semiotic point of view. How does singularity arise from the semiotic point of view? And the reference to Pinocchio is not new. Actually, I was also inspired by a special on Simondon that was broadcast by France Culture, I believe in 2015, some years ago, where for the first time this reference was made, although in a very superficial way. Because there is a problem of individuation, there is a problem of singularization, of becoming a person, becoming an individual in the story of Pinocchio, which is a disquieting modern myth. And in the story, the face is prominent, but also lying is prominent. So this is a quotation from Simondon's master work, which is L'individuation à la lumière des notions de forme et d'information, page 399 from the edition published in 2005. De même, la forme civique du stoïcisme latin peut se comprendre comme une conséquence de ce caractère réel de la relation. Le masque du rôle est aussi réel que le visage de l'individu qui le porte. I quote this passage from Simondon's Thèse d'État because, well, first of all, it's the only direct reference to the visage, to the face in the entire work, in which, on the contrary, the idea of the mask, the idea of masking is very present. And the relation mask-face is analyzed by Simondon throughout the history of philosophy, in this passage in particular to the philosophy of the Stoics, in order to re-problematize the role of the face, but also the role of the mask in building up the individual, in building up the person, in building up singularity, which are, of course, not the same thing. Why the mask? Because the mask is fundamentally technique, is fundamentally a technology. It's a technology of individualization, is a technology of singularization, is a technology of personality, but at the same time is a technology of faking, is a technology of lying. So if you again consider the story of Pinocchio, Pinocchio's best known feature is his nose that stretches out when he tells lies. This appears in chapter 17 of Le avventure di Pinocchio, Storia di un burattino by Carlo Lorenzini, also known as Collodi, that was published, as you know, for the first time in 1881. It should be noted that Collodi himself, in a little book called Note Gaie, cheerful notes, stated that to hide the truth of a speculum anime face, another papier-mâché nose is added to the real one. So there was this idea that we find also in the passage of Simondon, that in order to explain the genesis of his own fantasy, Collodi referred to this complex paradoxical dialectics between a face which is a speculum anime, a mirror of the soul, and a papier-mâché nose, which is added to the real one. However, some critics have pointed out that there is an inconsistency, what they call an inconsistency in the story of Pinocchio, because the nose actually grows when it is first carved by Geppetto, without Pinocchio ever lying. So in popular imagination, we see, oh, your nose is growing. And this reference is actually a reference to common sense inspired by Pinocchio's story. But this is not exactly true, because in Pinocchio's story, Pinocchio's nose grows at his very birth. When he's first created, he has never talked, and as a consequence, he has never lied. But Pinocchio's nose, as soon as it is created, it grows. The nose then appears only a couple of times in the story. reveals the blue fairy's power over Pinocchio when he acts disobediently. And you certainly remember that after the boy struggling and weeping over his deformed nose, the blue fairy summons woodpeckers to peck it back to normal. There are lots of interpretations on this phenomenon and this detail of the story, in which you can see also the constrictive power of benevolence and society, but also of a, let's say, technology of orthodoxy on this nose that must be pushed back to its normal size, that it must be pushed back to what it is supposed to be, which is again another reference to a very complex philosophical plexum and conundrum about the face, the mask, lying, the fact that this mask should be reconstructed over and over again. The lying is stigmatized, but is potentially also a way to break out from this mask, break out from the mask of the face, you know, as the nose of Pinocchio does. So what is the way in which the nose of Pinocchio is evoked in this story? This is the passage from chapter 3. After the eyes, it was time to carve the nose, which began to stretch as soon as finished. It began to grow and grow and grow till it became so long it seemed endless. So you probably remember the story. Geppetto first carves the eyes of Pinocchio, and as soon as he carves the eyes, he says to Pinocchio a sentence that then became the title of a very famous book and essay by Carlo Ginzburg, Occhiacci di Legno. Geppetto carves the eyes of Pinocchio and then immediately says to Pinocchio, Pinocchio, why are you staring at me with those occhiacci di legno, with those big, negatively connotated occhiacci? You know, it's difficult to translate occhiacci in French or in English. Why are you staring at me? So as soon as eyes are on the face of this marionette, of this puppet, these eyes immediately are seen as something that are constructing a dialogue, constructing an enunciation, a visual enunciation, and we could talk about Martin Buber, Levinas, Roizensberg, about this particular moment of acknowledging the other as eyes carved on a face, but acknowledging at the same time that these eyes are immediately connoted as negative. And this is all the more disquieting because these are the eyes of the creature, which are looked by the creator, and at the same time are looked back by the creator. So the relation between the creator and the creature revolves initially around the eyes, but at the same time immediately is a potentially threatening relation. And then after the eyes, in a sequence that reminds us of the visagéité described by Deleuze and Guattari in Mille Plateaux, there is the carving of the nose. And as soon as the nose is carved, it starts to grow and grow and grow endlessly. And then we'll know afterwards that the nose of Pinocchio grows when Pinocchio lies. So this passage is, I think, philosophically very interesting in relation to Simondon, in relation to the dialectics between the face and the fake, because as soon as the face is there as eyes, it is recognized, it brings about personhood, but it also brings about the possibility of a negative relation and even violence. And as soon as the nose is there, I remind you that in many cultures, in China, for instance, the nose is the facial element of individuation. You know how many cultures in Asia, including China, point to themselves. They point at the nose. The nose is told in Chinese with a kanji character that is then inscribed in the character of personhood. So in many cultures, the nose is the center of personhood, also because it is connected with breathing. It's a very complex cultural a paradigm that I've explored in other articles and other occasions. But what we see in this story of Pinocchio is that basically there is a coincidence between the birth, the genesis of personhood as individuation, as singularity, but also as creation of singularity, and the fake. So it is as if the possibility of being one, of being individual, of being singular, and the possibility of lying are actually consubstantial. Or at least this is the way I read this episode in Pinocchio's story. So is the story telling us that lying is the first genesis of individuality, is a sort of rebellion against the matter. It is the first germ of a reference to potentiality. So when we lie, we open potentiality in being. Being could be different from what it is. And this is the birth of potentiality. This is probably the birth also of humanity. In biblical myths, lying, no, we haven't eaten that fruit, is the first moment of individuation from the Creator, from God. So why am I going so philosophical today? Well, partially because I'm a little bit nostalgic about Paris, that they have to leave soon, so that makes me philosophical maybe, but also because my interest about artificial intelligence, the face and the fake, is framed by this reflection. I mean, deep fakes are very interesting, they're funny, they're disquieting, and it's very important to think about it, about the phenomenon of the deep fakes, or in social-cultural terms. You know, Professor Julien Lenguy, for instance, is carrying on an extremely important work on the role of the fake in our digital life, and also how we can possibly counter the pernicious presence of the fake in digital society. And he has also the skills to do that. My reflection is complementary to this sociocultural approach, because it is basically an abstract philosophical reflection which is framed by the question, but why is artificial intelligence so obsessed with the face? And why is artificial intelligence so obsessed with the fake? Why, since the beginning of the creation of generative adversarial networks, for instance, the first application of them, but I swear, the first one that was imagined by the creator of this new algorithm was in the construction of fake faces. Is this a coincidence? Is it just a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that we apply artificial intelligence so much to the creation of faces, and we apply artificial intelligence so much in the creation of fakes? My very daring hypothesis, which I propose to you today, is that it is not a coincidence. Well, this might seem probably quite absurd to you, but I really believe that we are witnessing a process of individualization by artificial intelligence. In a way, there is a process in the cultural development of artificial intelligence that is somehow aimed at a sort of individualization through lying, through the construction of the fake, and probably also through the construction of fake faces. In a way, artificial intelligence, advanced artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence of deep learning, of generative adversarial networks, is our Pinocchio. We are Geppetto. And as soon as we give birth to it, the nose of artificial intelligence starts to grow, and starts to grow endlessly. How should we interpret that? Well, probably I would like to interpret it as the fact that this is the inevitable metaphysical consequence of the relation between the creator and the creature. As soon as the creator gives rise to the creature must start to lie, meaning that it is the basis of its semiotic existence. Umberto Eco used to define semiotics as the discipline that studies everything that can be used to lie. So the fact that artificial intelligence is more and more lying to us, and that we are less and less endowed to detect these lies, is probably a sign that there is something deeply semiotic that is being generated by artificial intelligence. So these are just some very broad philosophical reflections that I proposed to you in the beginning of this workshop, that this workshop is not going to be only about philosophy, it's going to be also about linguistics, computational linguistics, cultural studies, semiotics, of course, the many applications of this discipline in the study of the phenomenon of the particular phenomenon of the deep fake. So all these approaches are, of course, extremely relevant, and they will construct the potential framework of our reflection today. Let me say, probably after these few introductory words, some more technical words to give you some more technical insights about what my research group, which I have the great honor to lead, Facets, is doing. So basically what Facets is trying to do is to understanding the role of the face in the digital world, and it is constructing a reflection that is constantly, and I would say collectively, evolving around this this main nucleum of investigation. So I've described to you, through this reference to Pinocchio, the most abstract framework of this inquiry of philosophy of communication about deep fakes, which, as I said to you, could be described as follows. There is a disquieting obsession in new intelligent machines about the creation of faces as there is about the creation of fake. Both seem to be intimately related to the process of individualization. The face is the main sociocultural and biological platform for human individualization. Denying a face is denying an individual. But so is the fake. To lie is to build a potentiality that was not apparent. In the modern myth of Pinocchio, the genesis of the fake and the genesis of the face coincide. Thus, Pinocchio lies in the first instance, and as soon as his nose is created, because he's becoming one. More generally, are machines learning to lie and to build fake faces because they're undergoing an inexorable process of individualization. So, a semiotic-oriented philosophy of digital communication aims at reading the technological meaning in the long period of the history of human semiotic systems in order to reveal the implicit ideologies that underlie the creation of new devices, processes, and artifacts of meaning. Artificial intelligence is no exception, as its development is usually underpinned by specific preconceptions about what intelligence is, how it should work, and what kind of results it is supposed to generate in the world. In parallel to our work in Paris the day before yesterday, today, and for I think 10 more days, we are reflecting in China, in Shanghai, where I'm a permanent visiting professor, on the semiotics of artificial intelligence. And one of the main crucial point of reflection concerns exactly the supposed revolutionary nature of artificial intelligence. There are many scholars, also in the Francophonie, for instance, in the Quebecois School of Philosophy of Artificial Intelligence, who deny the fact that artificial intelligence is revolutionary. So on the one hand, you have people saying, oh yeah, artificial intelligence is actually like triggering a revolution in our cultures and civilizations. But on the other hand, you have people who say, with right, I believe, righteously believe, that this is not a new industrial revolution, because the imaginary of artificial intelligence was already there well before the creation of the new algorithms of artificial intelligence. The idea of taking some inorganic matter and to bestow on this inorganic matter a form of behavior and a form of intelligence that is very similar to the human one and potentially is also an autonomous one is very old. You know, think about the myth of the golem, for instance, in the Jewish civilization. Think, of course, about the myth of Frankenstein, which is much more influenced by modern conditions of life. All these ancient and modern myths tell us that the ideology of the building of artificial intelligence has been there for a very long time, and it is intimately connected, and this is probably something that to some of you could sound as absurd as well, but it is intimately connected with our religious myths. You know, I have been a mutation of religious cultures for a very long time. My switch to the study of artificial intelligence is not a coincidence and is not simply determined by the desire of following the big fashion trend of artificial intelligence. It is, on the contrary, triggered by the probably absurd to you, but it makes sense to me, idea that studying artificial intelligence today is the best, provides the best standpoint to understand contemporary spirituality, contemporary religious cultures, how ancient religious ideologies connected with creation, for instance, connected with Genesis, evolve into new forms, but influence as well the new forms of technological creation we have with robots. A relation that reminds us of some semiotic ideologies that were enshrined in ancient religious cultures. It is not a coincidence that Japan is one of the most prolific producer of robots in the world since the beginning of the history of this technology. There is something that is deeply connected with the semiotic ideology and the religious culture of Japan. Think about the role that things have in Japanese religious culture. In Shinto, for instance, the fact that stones are animated by kami, by inner presences that function as sort of a soul of the inorganic. So all these is certainly present in the current evolution of artificial intelligence. And from my point of view, the only way to distinguish ourselves as academics from the very precious work that is done by other intellectuals, in journalists, for instance, or those who are engaged in popularization of knowledge, is to reframe the problem of artificial intelligence outside of the technical frame. So semiotics, as well as philosophy of communication and other disciplines, are, I believe, extremely precious to conduct this kind of investigation and to somehow give a new slant to our philosophical reflection on artificial intelligence.